So you'd be forgiven for thinking that it was spring today. It is absolutely stunning outside. 4th of March, come down to a little local club water with the attempt to try and catch some early spring carp. This sort of weather is absolutely perfect for catching the early carp. They will wake up with the weather, so as it's getting warmer, they're going to start to get more on the feed. And as we've had a particularly weird winter, where it's been more wet than cold, it's obviously thrown them out a little bit. But now with the sun coming out, first day of sun, temperature has increased, water clarity has got much better than we've seen in several weeks. I think now would be a good time to try and get ourselves out on the bank and put in some of those spring tactics that we normally use. So I'll walk you through some of the things that I've been using today, a couple of the rigs, tactics, spots I'll be using and trying, and what sort of approach I'd use primarily when I'm looking to try and bank a few carp at this early in the year. So yeah, keep watching and we'll have a cup of carp.
What I've done today is I've tucked myself in the back corner of this little lake. We've sort of looking how the wind's going down and been keeping an eye on where the fish have been showing before I set up. I had a little look around, make sure that I'm fishing as best as I can be, really. There's no point casting somewhere where you're not very confident, so confidence is key. Have a look round, make sure you're happy. If you see fish, all the better. One thing I am sort of thinking though, is I'm sort of having a look over this little corner today, I've noticed that there's a couple of little swells and a couple of backs coming up. If it goes a bit quiet on our rods for too long, I think I'm going to try a zig out there. Zig fishing might not quite be time of the year for it, but if I'm seeing them, I think it's worth a go. So I'll show you my rig setup for a zig. Really bog basic. If I can avoid it, unless I'm fishing really deep water, I won't be using a float or anything like that, because I don't think it's necessary. And yeah, we'll have a look at my zig setup and we'll see if we can get something on the zig. Always a good time. My rig today for my right hand rod. I might be about to catch a run on camera, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? On my right hand rod, it's a really simple hair rig. It's on an inline lead setup on a little leader for an inline bag. Solid bag, sorry. Because that's what I'm going to prioritise this rig on today as much as possible. So if we look here at the business end, we've got a size 7 fang twister. Nice bit of supple braid, connects just by a loop to this rig here. And then the hook bait we're using is one of the Scopex squid soluble boilies. Now there is a slight trouble with these, is when you put them on, they fit great. After a little while in the water, they do go a bit weird. Obviously because the bait's deteriorating as you go, but part of me quite likes that aesthetic. I quite like how it looks. I think that it gives the fish a bit more confidence as they're pulling that bait into the mouth. It'll be fizzing in the water. But just something to be mindful of when you do it, especially if you're going to top it with a bit of corn or something like that. It's not going to sit how it did when you first cast it. So yeah, we're going to get this into a bag and we're going to pop that back out on the mark. And yeah, that's my rig primarily for today. The other rig I'll show you in a bit is just a Ronnie rig. Hard boom, standard for a sort of spring day roving rod, if you will. Yeah, let's get this in a solid bag and get it back out there. So let's have a look at the zig rig that I was using today. So my zigs, I kind of have 2 or 3 lined up and ready to go per session. And what I'm using today is the Nash Zig Bug. I know these are a bit old school now, but I've had a lot of success with them and I thoroughly enjoy using them. So I just have one of them set up on a zig at a time. And this one I don't have out at the moment. The reason for that is that I'll have, like I say, 2 or 3 set up. I'll leave 2 of them soaking in glug, and I will have 1 out. So every time I catch, every time I recast, I'll swap it out, and I will pop this on the hook. And the reason for that is obviously that once I catch or I need to rephrase, I've got a fresher glug ready to go, hook length ready to go. Now, the length of it doesn't really matter, as you say, it's quite a long rig. The only difference in my zig rig, really, is what I do at the other end. So each time at the other end, I will have a very long kicker tied to a swivel. You can see where I've taken that off after I had a fish earlier. That's obviously stood up and over your swivel there. And the reason I do that is because when you're casting a zig, particularly if you're not using a float or something like that, you want to make sure that once it hits the lake, or once you bring it to a stop, it's going to kick away from your lead. There's nothing worse, especially if you're fishing with zigs at distance, than casting your zig up, putting a lot of time in, putting a lot of effort in, making sure you're on the fish, getting everything perfect to notice that you've tangled. So I do use a very long kicker for it. And yeah, the reason purely being that will help make sure that once I bring it to a stop and it kicks itself away, I know that is clear from the lead. And that's all my zig rigs are really. They're really simple. I don't really believe in having rigs that are overly complicated. I know today everyone's trying to tie the most fancy rig. I can do this, I do that, I tie this to this, to this, to this, to this, to this. Just go simple. Just go simple. The fish are getting wiser, that is for sure. But at the end of the day, there's no point putting all this time and effort into a rig when, you know, you look two swims down a lad that's using just a simple hair rig with a single buoy, he's catching more than you. Don't faff around trying to tie these super complicated rigs. As long as your rig is out there and you've got a bait on there, you will catch a fish. Don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it. Chill. It will pay off. There we go. Right. That is absolutely stunning common. I did give him a little weigh. He's got 19. He's a torpedo of a fish. Absolute torpedo. Beautiful common. Beautiful fish. What a cracking result. I'm coming near to the end of my session. So I don't know if I'm going to have time to get another one, but I'm going to give it a good shot. So I'm going to go straight back on the mark. Just get this boy put back first, and yeah, see if we can get another fish out. Come on, you, let's get you back. So as I mentioned, that was a very difficult fish to catch today. I'm not too sure why, because I've seen them, I've watched them, I've got my rods and spots where I've seen them feeding, and just hooking them is proving to be very difficult. That fish, though, weirdly, might have been the laziest run I've ever had in my life. A couple of little ticks away, bit of a bend in the rod, and I will be honest with you, right up until I saw his head come above the water, I thought it was a bream. Thought dead certain that was a bream. The whole fight seemed very lackadaisical, so clearly the water is still very cold, they're still very lethargic, and they're not acting as you'd expect coming into this time of year. Just fine. That's absolutely fine. That's what you'd kind of expect given the cold spell we've had, because the temperature has definitely dropped today. But just a little side note, because as I mentioned at the end of that clip, I'm getting straight back on the mark. Something that Harrison taught me, you've probably seen his pictures or a couple of videos I might have of him, is to be able to cast by sight. Unbelievably essential skill. Something that I feel I couldn't do without in my fishing now. So what I mean by that is up to probably 50-60 yards, I'm confident I don't need a line clip, I don't need to do repeated casts. I can eye it and hit the marks that I'm going for. Very, very useful skill, and I would encourage people to try and take some of the dependency out of the line clip, unless you're fishing at distance and stuff like that, where it does become more essential, and learn to sight cast. Be able to get under a tree. The minimum disturbance, unreal. Because like I say, I've been struggling today, trying to get the fish out, and I saw the bush that I'm under now, and I thought I need to get a rod on there, and I put it on there, first cast, on the mark, no questions. I sat down, and the rod started to tick away, and I genuinely believe that's because I weren't messing around trying to get on the mark. I was just able to look at it, get it in there, and that's what produced a bite immediately. Really, really perked up a difficult day's fishing. So if there's any skill that I could recommend you take into your spring and summer fishing, it's to be able to cast by sight. It takes practice. It's not a very easy thing, and you're going to hate it. But definitely learn it, The benefits, the payoff from it is exponential. So I'm going to hope, I've probably got about an hour left. I'm going to see if I can get one more fish out. If I can, I'll be over the moon. Great start to March.
So an important mark to consider when you are fishing at this time of year, where it's grey, it's overcast, it's nasty, and the leaves still aren't on the trees, everything's a bit, yeah. Important thing to consider is where you are fishing. As most people will, if I'm honest with you, it's not exactly like I'm revealing a trade secret, go close to the margins, as tight as you could possibly get. Because what you tend to find is the margin isn't actually the margin. What we see might have an undercut, might have an overhang of a branch, or anything really that the carp would be in. And they're not really inclined to move at this time of year. They will just hole up. And if you drop a bait just in front of them, literally in front of them, they'll eat it. So yeah, it's important that really when you are thinking about what spot you want to fish, you are getting your rod, your bait, as tight to a mark as you possibly can. So for example, the bush I'm fishing at the moment, you're basically clipping it on your way down, and the other rod is in close to being a margin. Obviously. Sorry, on the in close margin. There we go. On the in close margin. And I'm dropping that in, which makes it a hell of a lot easier, but I'm being very, very sure that again I might be clipping a little branch on the way down or something like that, just really making sure that I'm as tight as I can get. So if there is that undercut or something I can't see where the carp could be hiding, I'm not leaving the bait 10 meters away, 5 foot away, whatever it'll be. The bait is in front of their faces. And that is what I believe gets bites over this time of year, right up to spring when they start the spring feed. That's what will get you your bites. Obviously, as we progress through this month, the weather is hopefully going to get warmer. So we'll be looking into more trap setting, leaving bait patches where you get the fish to come to you actively, feeding on the spot, having 5, 6, 7 fish feeding on your spot. But at the moment, this is not the case. Single bait, tight in, off we go. And that has worked today, and hopefully will continue to work throughout the remainder of this month for me. But fishing is fishing, so we'll just see what happens.